Hey, what are you watching?
I'm watching your friend Mike's new show.
Well, that about does it for tonight. Join me next week for part 7 of the Disney XD Renaissance. I'll talk about Yokai Watch, story of little demons that make you want to pee your pants. Who the hell can't relate to that?
Oh God, not this thing. Here, Mom, let me put on a real show for you. Brought to you by Skillshare. Welcome to the Q Zone, the show that now has a real desk and artwork on the walls. A Batman poster I pulled out of a copy of Wizard magazine in the late 90s. I'm your host, Patrick Willems, and to all the people who thought the talk show format was just a one-time joke for the last video, you were wrong. This is here to stay until the pandemic ends or until I get bored of it, whichever comes first. Jake, how are you doing tonight?
Ooh, Pat's back for round 2, and I gotta say that first episode, that recap one, mwah, chef's kiss for you, buddy. Hit it, Rach.
Good to have you here, buddy. Now, the first order of business, my beard. I haven't shaved it since I started self-quarantining, and it's just reaching the point where my mustache hairs are starting to creep into my mouth a little bit. So vote in the comments for whether I should trim it, shave it, or let it keep on growing. Also, in the past 2 weeks, there has been no response from John Krasinski after I called out his less than stellar audio quality and theme song that is less good than my theme song. If you ask me, that deafening silence speaks volumes. It's okay, John. If you talk, I promise no aliens are going to rush out and kill you. Or maybe you did try to respond, but your audio quality is so bad that no one heard. Who can say? Today's top story is the 1987 John McTiernan film, Predator. One might call this film a masterpiece, a work of true cinematic innovation, genre-redefining kino, or the raddest fucking shit I've ever seen. Is this hyperbole? No, it's not. So to talk about this, I'd like to welcome our very first guest, my dad, Hank Willems. How's it going?
Just fine, thanks.
You're doing well? You're keeping safe?
I am, yeah. I feel well, and I'm busy and productive. It's good.
Cool. So our topic for tonight is the film Predator. Dad, what are your thoughts on Predator?
I have no thoughts on Predator. I've never seen the film.
Do you know anything about it?
No.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. Hank Willems, everybody.
Woo! Let's give it up for Patrick's dad, everyone.
To understand what makes Predator so brilliant and so much more than just Commando with monsters. Side note, Commando is a great, wonderful movie, and I would never dare slander it. We have to go through some film history, specifically the history of the slasher movie. The slasher movie as we know it began in the 1970s, but combined influences that had amassed over the previous few decades. Italian giallo films, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians, lots of movies about crazy murderers released in the 60s by Hammer Films, stuff like that. This all coalesced in the mid-70s with Bob Clark's Black Christmas and Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then was refined by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill in Halloween, which solidified the core tropes that the genre would use moving forward. A cast of mostly teenagers getting picked off one by one by a silent killer in a mask until there's one left, the trope known as the final girl, and she has to face off against the killer and destroy them.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula!
After Halloween, slasher movies really blew the fuck up, and over the next 9 years, we got... okay, here we go. When a Stranger Calls, Halloween 2, Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th Part 2, Friday the 13th Part 3, Friday the 13th The Final Chapter, Friday the 13th A New Beginning, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, Prom Night, Silent Scream, He Knows You're Alone, My Bloody Valentine, The Prowler, Slumber Party Massacre, The House on Sorority Row, Sleepaway Camp, A Nightmare on Elm Street, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, The Burning, Silent Night, Deadly Night, Graduation Day, Alone in the Dark, The Funhouse, April Fool's Day, and many more. The tropes and rules and formulas of the genre became so well known that they would be satirized by Wes Craven's Scream the following decade. But even years before Scream came along, the genre had become a bit stale. Sure, people enjoyed going to the movies and cheering as Jason slaughtered some dumb horny teens, but these movies had lost their edge and largely stopped being scary. Anyway, in the 80s, while the slasher movie boom was happening, there was another big evolution in another popular genre: action movies. See, this was the decade that a man from Austria changed American cinema. He was known as Arnold Strong, Mr. Universe, the Barbarian, the Destroyer, the Terminator. But mostly, we know him as the 38th governor of California. Guys, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Before Arnold, action stars looked like Steve McQueen or Clint Eastwood. They weren't the strongest looking guys in the world, but they could shoot a gun or ride a motorcycle real good and look cool while doing it. And they were human. They got hurt. They wore suits. And then Arnold showed up and looked like the living embodiment of a comic book superhero. His bicep was the size of Clint Eastwood's head. He wasn't human at all. He was superhuman. And soon, action movies stopped being this and started being this. Again, I love Commando and I'm not dissing it at all. See, when Clint Eastwood is in a movie, he's a badass who looks rad as hell, but you still worry that he might get shot and die. When Arnold is in a movie though, come on. I'm not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure when your muscles are that thick, they act kind of like Kevlar, and bullets just get lodged in them and don't pass through to your internal organs, so he's fine. You ever think about how weird it is that for a period of time, the biggest movie star in America was an Austrian bodybuilder who could barely speak English? Sylvester Stallone, scrappy Oscar nominee for acting and screenwriting, soon beefed up and joined Arnold on the front lines of the muscle-bound action revolution. The first Rambo movie was a dark, dramatic thriller about a Vietnam vet struggling to adapt to life back home. But the sequel, which for some reason I'll never understand, was called Rambo: First Blood, Part 2, is about Rambo being sent off to basically win the Vietnam War all by himself.
Do we get to win this time?
This time it's up to you.
Suddenly, he's a superhero, because that was the style at the time. Really, the ultimate example of these kinds of movies is the aforementioned Commando, in which Arnold's daughter is kidnapped, so to get her back, he wipes out the entire military force of a small nation, while barely getting a scratch on him. It's a wonderful film. If slasher movies had stopped being scary, action movies had lost any sense of danger. Both were fun, but they existed in a cartoon reality. They were pure escapism. This was Reagan's America. And when Americans went to the movies, they wanted to feel powerful and laugh at the weak idiots getting killed by hypermasculine gods. Now, before we move on, we're going to take a quick break for another installment of our popular segment, Matt Whines, as Matt Torpy continues his discussion about the decline of popular 90s cartoon, Rugrats.
And I would get so excited when this show was on when I was a kid. Mind you, I was a baby myself. I was about like 5 or 6 years old. That I would always tell my mom when it was on. And of course, she didn't give a shit, but I don't know. I think it's cute. Not only did it reflect my reality in a very sort of magical time, it also didn't feel pandering because it was unsettling. The cartoons, the babies were ugly and lumpy. Everyone was kind of lumpy. There was Mark Mothersbaugh music playing, you know, of Devo fame. You had two parallel realities. There was the babies with their own prelingual language and their imaginative capacity to kind of recreate the world around them. And then they were kind of existing in relation to the parallel real world of their parents.
Do you ever worry about Matt? Nah, me neither. I'm sure he's doing just fine right now. Right, Jake?
Well, you gotta give it to Matt. He definitely has very, very intense opinions about things that are stupid.
So now that we've established the state of slasher and action movies of the time, the question arises, how do you change that? How do you put real danger and suspense back in these genres? How do you make the audience stop laughing or cheering at every death scene? Well, the answer that writers Jim and John Thomas and director John McTiernan came up with was simple. You combine the genres. For the first half hour, Predator is the perfect example of another roided out 80s action movie. Arnold plays Dutch, the leader of an elite squad of mercenaries. His old buddy Dylan, a CIA agent, comes to him with a mission. They've got to rescue a foreign official who was captured by insurgents in a Central American jungle. We meet the team, and each one is a larger-than-life character. There's Mac, Ramirez, Blaine, Billy, and Hawkins. They're all pals and joke around in the helicopter, listening to some cool tunes. Are these bad enough dudes to rescue the foreign delegates? You're damn right they are. When Dutch and company find the base, we get a big, classic Commando-esque sequence. They wipe out everybody. Arnold drops one-liners.
Stick around.
It's pure 80s macho action maximalism, all over the top and excessive. It's even shot in that sort of 80s way, where there's a shot of a hero firing a massive assault rifle, then we cut to a shot of stuff exploding and people flying through the air. By the end of this sequence, one thing is very clear. This is the most unstoppable group of badasses in film history. They're so busy kicking ass, they don't even have time to bleed. And that is when the movie changes genres. I would argue that Predator falls into the small group of gear shift movies. Films that suddenly pivot at a specific moment into a very different kind of movie, taking on a new tone or even genre. Other gear shift movies include Psycho, Audition, or Boogie Nights. In the first 30 minutes, we experience an entire mini action movie. The heroes go on a mission, they kick ass, and they win. But as soon as the battle is done, we realize they didn't really win. They didn't rescue anybody because the mission was a sham. They were being used as hired killers by the CIA. All that awesome righteous violence was meaningless.
So you cooked up a story and dropped the 6 of us in a meat grinder.
And then, as the group heads back to the choppa, suddenly Shane Black's character gets brutally murdered by an unseen killer. And from here to the end, the film takes on the exact structure of a slasher movie. Let's go down the list, shall we? Small group of people? Check. Getting picked off one by one? Check. A masked killer? Check. POV shots from the killer? Check. One final girl? Check. That's right. Arnold Schwarzenegger is up there with the best final girls ever, alongside Jamie Lee Curtis, Sigourney Weaver, and Neve Campbell. And now we're going to briefly hit pause on this discussion as we jump over to special man-on-the-street correspondent Charl for another installment of Let's Get Coconuts. Great stuff, Charl.
I gotta say, Pat, I still don't like that coconut.
And now, back to Predator. You can see Predator's genre shift take place in a single shot, as the camera starts on a medium shot of Dutch, looking like a badass, then cranes upward into the trees until it arrives at this image. Hawkins' naked body, dripping blood, hanging like a piece of meat. Pure horror movie imagery. As it morphs into a slasher movie, Predator reveals the emptiness of the kind of machismo that dominated the first 30 minutes. After the first attack by the Predator, the heroes unload all their automatic weapons on it. They basically level the entire goddamn jungle with gunfire. It's full-on gun porn, and they hit nothing. All that shooting turns out to be impotent. The most powerful dudes in the world are revealed to be completely powerless. Here's what McTiernan has to say about it on the commentary track.
When I first went to work on this project, I had the feeling that people had a sort of perverse fascination with pictures of guns firing. So I created this sequence where they take all of their guns and they blaze away continually for 5 minutes flat, and they flatten the jungle and they mow down everything. And what I was really doing was sort of to quietly ridicule the desire to see pictures of guns firing. That's sort of moral separate piece here. In order to do it, I set up a circumstance where there are no human beings in front of the guns. In fact, the point of all the firing was, as the man says, as soon as they stop shooting, we hit nothing. The whole point was the impotence of all of the guns, which was just exactly the opposite of what I believed I was being hired to sell.
This is the best kind of subversion. It makes us question what we want from this kind of movie, but it also throws us off balance. We thought we knew what to expect, but now if these guys are stripped of their power and are actually afraid, anything could happen. Before this movie came along, audiences had gotten very used to how slasher movies worked. The killer is gonna walk really slowly, the dumb horny teens will split up and wander alone into dark rooms, and they'll get stabbed one by one. But what happens when this is applied to a team that has spent decades fighting the toughest enemies, who have enough firepower to take out a small country, who aren't scared of anything? This time we can't shout at the screen and tell the characters, hey you fucking idiots, stop splitting up, stop backing up against the windows, stop putting your weapons down, stop taking your clothes off. This time, the characters are way ahead of us. They're stronger and smarter than we are. How do you make these genres suspenseful and scary again? You add protagonists that are way more capable than the genre has ever had, then strip them down from these impossible muscle-bound gods. Make them weak and scared until they're just people.
Billy, you know something. What is it?
I'm scared, Pancho.
And then kill them in horrific ways. Yikes. If you want to go even further, Predator substitutes violence for sex. There's the classic slasher trope that if you have sex, that means you get killed.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex.
But here, it's all the characters who have killed other people who get killed themselves. The only one spared is Anna, the innocent woman caught in the middle of all this, who never actually hurts anybody. Is this a reach? Maybe, but that's the fun of cinema studies. I think it's a big missed opportunity that the Predator formula hasn't been applied to other types of movies. There are so many genres that would work incredibly well mashed up with slasher movies. Spy movies, where a Mission Impossible type team is hiding out at a safe house and then some unstoppable alien killer starts killing them. Or something like John Wick, where you've got all these unstoppable assassins. Or right now, I can't believe no one is writing a version where something is killing off members of a superhero team. Come on. Predator meets the Avengers. Free movie idea right here. If you make it, please just give me a special thanks in the end credits. Or hire me to write it. I don't know, that would be cool too. Predator is not usually considered a challenging film, but it takes two of the most popular genres of the 1980s and completely defies what we expect from them, making something surprising and new. John McTiernan recognized that this certain wave of action movies was reaching its end, and with Predator, he deconstructed it. Then, a year later with Die Hard, he blew it up completely, revolutionizing the genre and setting it on a new path that would dominate the next decade. And next time he and Schwarzenegger worked together in Last Action Hero, he delivered a full-on satire of modern action movies. So what I'm asking is John McTiernan the most important American action director of the last 50 years? Maybe. So you know what? We're gonna talk more about him on next week's episode. Join us, won't you? But first, we pass things over to our good buddy Jake for an installment of Jake's Politics Corner. And that's coming up right after this ad read. Let me paint a picture for you. You're stuck at home, so you decide to finally tackle that big writing project you've been meaning to get around to, that awesome sci-fi screenplay. But you're stuck on how to handle the world building, how to introduce the setting you've created. But then, you watch this Patrick Willems video, and he recommends a Skillshare course called Science Fiction and Fantasy, Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds by Lincoln Michel, a whole class on handling world building in genre stories. So you click the link in the description, and luckily, you're one of the first 1,000 people to click it. So when you sign up, instead of paying $8.25 per month for a premium membership, your first 2 months are totally free. And after that class, you take more classes and learn about cooking or graphic design. What I'm saying is, that could be you. Or you can take classes on whatever else you want. Just click the link in the description to sign up for Skillshare and start learning today.
Oh, he's back at it again for episode 2. And that first one, you know, that was no, Can we do that one again?
Well, that about wraps it up for us tonight. Join me next week when I talk about a bunch of shit I fucked up lines.
Oh, we are back for episode 2, and Pat, I gotta say, that last episode was a great spicy meatball. Rachel?
I hate myself.
Oh, we got Hank Willems in the house. Let's go. Let's give it up for Hank Willems, Thick Daddy Quillems' own thick daddy. Let's go. That Alien in Predator, though, when it takes its mask off, don't you feel like somebody did that thing in the memes where they minimize all of your facial features? You know? That's so stupid what I just said. But it is what I said. But it's not a usable line.